People don't always tell you when they stop respecting you. They just start showing it. They interrupt you more. They talk over you in conversations. They stop asking for your opinion. They cancel plans, leave your messages on read, and somehow you always feel like an afterthought, like you're in the room but invisible, and you wonder what changed. The truth? It's not always them. Sometimes it's you. Not something you did once, but a pattern in how you live. In the small, quiet ways you give your power away every single day. Without noticing, you teach people how to treat you, and over time, they learn to overlook you, dismiss you, and disrespect you. And Nietzsche would have seen it coming. He believed that most people aren't victims of cruelty. They're victims of their own unwillingness to confront who they've become. He once said, "Whoever despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. But once he loses that, he's done." This isn't about being liked. It's about being respected, because once that's gone, everything else slips with it. Your voice, your influence, and your sense of worth. So today, we're going to walk through 7 things you do, often without realizing, that quietly make people lose respect for you. They're not just habits, they're signs of deeper truths about how you see yourself. And Nietzsche, he wouldn't have comforted you. He would have challenged you to tear it all down, to look in the mirror without flinching and rebuild from what's real. Let's begin with the mask you wear. You think being nice will earn you respect, but ask yourself, has it? You agree when you want to say no. You smile when something bothers you. You stay quiet just to avoid tension. And over time, people don't see that as kindness. They see it as weakness. That's the danger of living behind the mask of niceness. At first, people might appreciate how easy you are to be around, but then they notice something else. You never stand firm. You don't push back. You fold too quickly. And they stop listening. Because if you never draw a line, how will they know where you stand? Nietzsche saw this clearly. He didn't trust surface-level morality or forced politeness. He believed people who constantly strive to be agreeable often do it out of fear, not virtue. Fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, fear of being alone. And that fear makes you invisible. Look around you. Think about the people in your life who command respect. Are they nice in the traditional sense? Or are they honest, clear, firm in what they believe, even if it rubs people the wrong way? Being respectful doesn't mean being passive. Being kind doesn't mean being spineless. Consider this. You're in a group chat. Everyone's throwing around ideas. You have a suggestion, but you hold back because you don't want to disrupt the flow. Someone else throws out the same idea 5 minutes later, and suddenly everyone's praising them. Now you're frustrated, but can you really blame them? They didn't ignore you. You ignored yourself. People stop respecting you when you stop respecting your voice. And the harsh truth, that nice guy act, the one you think makes you lovable, it doesn't fool anyone for long. It makes people comfortable, sure, but not moved, not impressed, not loyal. Because no one admires the person who always agrees. They admire the one who speaks with conviction, even when it's uncomfortable. So here's the question Nietzsche would have asked you. Are you being kind, or are you just afraid of being disliked? Think about it. Now, let's talk about something even more subtle and more dangerous. You hide behind humility. The lie of humility is a dangerous one because it's so easy to believe you're doing the right thing. You shrink yourself, you deflect compliments, you downplay your skills, you tell people, oh, it was nothing. And maybe at first they see it as modesty, but over time they stop taking you seriously. Not because you're not capable, but because you never act like you are. And here's the part that stings. Deep down, you know you're not being humble. You're hiding. You're afraid that if you showed your true power, you'd be criticized for it, or worse, rejected. So you cover it up with false humility, hoping someone else will do the work of validating you. But they won't. Nietzsche believed that humility, when weaponized to gain approval or dodge responsibility, was a form of dishonesty. He saw through the charade. In Beyond Good and Evil, he warns us that many who appear selfless are often just too weak to assert themselves. Ask yourself this: have you ever watched someone else with half your talent get twice the recognition just because they owned it, just because they said, yes, I did that and I did it well? Did you feel invisible in comparison? Did you feel frustrated If so, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you take credit? You can't be respected for what you refuse to claim. Think of a colleague who always speaks confidently about their work, even if their results aren't extraordinary. Then think of someone who quietly excels but never says a word. Who do people follow? Who gets invited to bigger opportunities? Not the quiet genius, the one who shows up, the one who isn't afraid to let their excellence be seen. Respect doesn't come from hiding, it comes from standing in your value unapologetically. And if you're telling yourself that silence is humility, I have to ask, what are you afraid people will see if you finally speak with confidence? Because the truth is, when you dim your light to comfort others, you don't make them brighter, you just make the room darker. And people don't gather around dim lights, they walk past them. So, are you being humble, or are you just hoping someone else will say what you're too afraid to admit? Let's go deeper now. What happens when your fear doesn't just hide you, but stops you from standing up at all? You avoid conflict like it's poison. You flinch at disagreement. You convince yourself that keeping the peace is always the noble thing. But ask yourself, is it really peace or just avoidance dressed up as maturity? People notice it, maybe not right away, but eventually they see that you never speak up when it matters. You let things slide. You let others cross your boundaries, interrupt your thoughts, undermine your contributions, and you say nothing. You laugh it off. You change the subject. You pretend it doesn't bother you. But inside, it does. And worse, they know it does. And they lose respect for you because of it. Nietzsche believed that confrontation was part of growth. He didn't see struggle as something to run from. He saw it as the very thing that made us strong. He wrote, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." But people often forget what he meant. Growth comes through resistance, not silence. Look at your own life. Ever had a friend who always agreed with you, never challenged your thinking, never said, "I see it differently"? Did you respect them more over time or less? The same applies to you. Avoiding conflict doesn't make you look wise. It makes you look unsure of yourself. It tells people your values are negotiable. And the moment they sense that, they stop taking you seriously. Let's say someone at work takes credit for your idea during a team meeting. You feel it in your gut, that sting of injustice. But instead of speaking up, you just nod and smile. Maybe you tell yourself, "It's not worth it," or "I don't want to cause drama." But here's the truth. You're not avoiding drama, you're avoiding discomfort. And that discomfort is the price of self-respect. How many times have you walked away from conversations feeling small, not because they overpowered you, but because you refused to stand your ground? And how many more times will you do it before you realize that respect doesn't come from being agreeable? It comes from having a backbone. Nietzsche didn't believe in harmony for its own sake. He believed in standing in your truth, even if it meant being disliked, because in his eyes, being disliked with integrity is better than being liked with shame. So here's the real question. Are you avoiding conflict, or are you avoiding yourself? Now let's talk about what happens when you stop owning your pain and start wearing it as your identity. This is the fourth thing that makes people lose respect for you: adopting a victimhood mindset. And let's be clear, this isn't about denying your pain. Life can be brutal. People get hurt, betrayed, abandoned, but there's a difference between surviving something and turning it into your entire personality. You've met people like this. Maybe you've even been one without realizing. Every conversation circles back to what someone did to them. Every new challenge is filtered through past wounds. They don't share to connect, they share to excuse. And over time, people stop feeling compassion and start feeling exhausted. Why? Because constant victimhood becomes manipulation. It puts the burden of your healing onto everyone else. And Nietzsche, harsh as ever, didn't tolerate that. He believed that clinging to pain was a form of weakness disguised as depth. In his words, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. He didn't believe you were meant to stay broken. He believed you were meant to rise. So ask yourself, are you seeking healing, or are you addicted to sympathy? Take a moment, think about someone you know who always has a reason why nothing is their fault. It's always their upbringing, their boss, their ex, their bad luck. Every setback is someone else's doing. They never reflect inward. They never ask, what was my part in this? Now ask, do you respect them? Probably not, because responsibility, not blame, is where respect begins. You could have had a hard childhood. You could have been treated unfairly. But if all you do is repeat that story, you'll never be more than the sum of your wounds. People respect those who rise in spite of their pain, not those who endlessly retell it. And in today's culture, this mindset is everywhere. Social media makes it easy to turn pain into performance. You post vague quotes about being betrayed. You hint at drama. You chase validation through pity. But here's the thing, pity is not respect. It's condescension with a sad face. So here's the honest, uncomfortable question. Are you telling your story to grow or to stay small and be seen? Because the more you use pain to shield yourself from accountability, the more people pull away. Not because they don't care, but because they're tired of carrying what you refuse to unpack. And Nietzsche, he would have looked you in the eye and said, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after." What happens when your need to be liked turns into a silent addiction? This is the fifth thing that quietly drains respect from how people see you, your obsessive need for validation. And it's tricky because it's easy to confuse this with something healthy. After all, we're social creatures, right? We want to be appreciated, recognized, valued. But here's where it turns toxic. When your sense of worth starts depending on what others think, say, or don't say. You post a photo online and check it every 10 minutes for likes. You say something in a conversation, then immediately scan faces to see if they approve. You're constantly adjusting who you are based on who's in the room. And eventually people see it and lose respect. Because people can feel when your confidence is rented instead of owned. Nietzsche would have called this the death of individuality. He wrote, "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to teach him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." In other words, when your compass is built on applause, you'll never find your true direction. Think about this. Have you ever been around someone who never takes a stance until they've heard everyone else speak first? Someone who plays both sides just to be safe. Someone who mirrors the strongest personality in the room just to fit in. Do you admire that person or do you quietly dismiss them? Respect doesn't go to the person trying to please everyone. It goes to the one who dares to speak from their center, even if it's unpopular. Let's bring it into the real world. Imagine a team leader at work who can't make a decision without polling the whole room. They change direction anytime someone raises a concern. They apologize even when they've done nothing wrong, just to avoid tension. Over time, what happens? People stop trusting their leadership. They may still smile, still nod, but behind closed doors, they say what they really think. They're soft, they just want to be liked. And in that moment, the respect evaporates. So now you have to ask yourself, how much of your life is shaped by what others might think? How many things have you said yes to when you meant no? How often have you edited yourself down just to avoid a raised eyebrow? Because the moment your self-worth becomes a group project, you've already lost control of it. Nietzsche wouldn't have told you to seek praise. He would have told you to become someone worth praising, even if no one claps. So, if respect is what you truly want, here's the shift. Stop performing, start embodying, because only one of those can't be taken from you. Now let's look at something even more damaging. Not what you do for others, but what you do against yourself. The sixth thing that makes people lose respect for you is betraying your own standards. And let's be honest, it doesn't happen all at once. It starts in small ways. You tell yourself it's okay just this once. You compromise on what you believe because you don't want to offend anyone. You bend your values in quiet moments, thinking no one will notice. But they do. Because even if you don't say it out loud, your actions start telling a different story. One where your word can't be trusted. One where your identity is up for sale, depending on who's watching. Nietzsche warned against this type of inner disloyalty. He believed that living without fidelity to your core principles was a form of spiritual decay. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he said, "The soul that knows itself but does not act accordingly is more despicable than the one who never knew itself." You can't expect others to respect a version of you that even you don't protect. Picture this. You're known for preaching honesty, but you lie to save face. You say you value discipline, but everyone sees you cut corners. You call yourself loyal, yet you gossip behind a friend's back. You claim to be driven, but you procrastinate every meaningful goal. Eventually, people stop listening to what you say because they've seen what you tolerate in yourself. And the worst part? Every time you betray your own standards, your self-respect takes a hit too. You don't feel solid, you don't feel proud, and that uncertainty radiates out. People pick up on it, even if they can't explain why. Something about you just doesn't feel grounded. So, let me ask you, what promises have you made to yourself that you keep breaking? And how many of those have become habits others quietly judge you for? In today's world, it's easy to fake integrity. You post quotes, you talk about boundaries and self-care and doing the work. But what are you really living behind closed doors? Because that's where respect is either built or lost. And remember, respect isn't just about others watching you, it's about you watching you. When you start honoring your word, even when no one's clapping, something shifts. You walk different, you speak with more weight, you become someone people instinctively trust, even if they don't know why. Nietzsche didn't believe in moral perfection, he believed in personal truth, the kind that costs you comfort but earns you power, not over others, over yourself. So here's the truth. You can't expect the world to take you seriously if you keep breaking the rules you say you live by. Let's go one step deeper. What happens when you've given away so much of yourself that there's nothing solid left? The seventh and final reason people lose respect for you is this. You live without a backbone. You bend to every opinion. You mold yourself to fit in. You become whatever the room needs, not out of generosity, but out of fear. And at first, people might find you agreeable, easy to get along with, but eventually they realize there's nothing there, no core, no edge, no gravity, and respect never grows in someone who feels hollow. Nietzsche had a name for this kind of person, the last man. He described them as the kind of people who avoid risk, discomfort, and challenge. People who would rather be safe than great, comfortable than honest, approved than alive. He said, "What is noble? That which does not feel itself superior, but wants to become so." But if you never plant your feet, never say what you really think, never choose your path, how could anyone see you as noble? How could they even see you at all? Think about how this shows up today. You're in a group of friends. One person makes an offhand comment that crosses a line. Maybe it's cruel, maybe it's dishonest. You know it's wrong, you feel it, but you laugh anyway. You go along with it because speaking up feels risky. You don't want to be that person. But here's the problem. Every time you betray what you know is right, not only do others stop trusting you, you stop trusting yourself. And when people see that you stand for nothing, they assume they can treat you however they want. And most of the time, they're right. Ask yourself, when was the last time you held your ground when it cost you something? Your reputation, a friendship, a relationship, an opportunity. Because the people we truly respect are never the ones who go along to get along. They're the ones who have a spine, who can be disagreed with without being shaken, who can stand alone if necessary, and do it with grace. And no, this doesn't mean being loud or aggressive. It means having substance, being so rooted in your values, your identity, your purpose, that you don't need to perform for approval. You've met people like this. They walk into a room and don't say much, but everyone feels their presence, not because they demand attention, but because they don't need it. That's what it means to have a backbone, to be someone who others feel safe around, not because you agree with them, but because they know exactly where you stand. So here's your moment of truth. Are you living as yourself or as a reflection of everyone else's expectations? Because if you don't own who you are, the world will reshape you into something forgettable. Now that we've laid it all bare, let's bring everything full circle. So now you've seen it. The 7 hidden ways people lose respect for you. Not all at once, not in some big, dramatic fallout, but gradually, as you wear the mask of niceness, hide behind false humility, avoid conflict, live in a victimhood mindset, chase validation, betray your own standards, and walk through life without a backbone. The truth is, most people don't lose respect for you because of what happens to you, but because of how you respond to it. Nietzsche believed that the strongest form of power wasn't over others, but over yourself. The courage to stand firm, to speak truthfully, to live authentically, even if it makes others uncomfortable. That's where real respect begins. You don't earn respect by asking for it. You earn it by becoming someone who doesn't need to. So, Here's your challenge. Look at the 7 points again. Be honest with yourself. Which one do you struggle with the most right now? Which one hit a little too close to home? Drop it in the comments, not for sympathy, but as a declaration that you're ready to change, ready to become solid, respected, and unshakable, not because of how others see you, but because of how you see yourself. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs this reminder too, someone who's been living small, soft, and unseen, and needs that fire lit again. And remember, in a world that's begging you to blend in, standing firm in who you are is the most radical act of all. If you're ready for more truth like this, raw, unfiltered, and rooted in philosophy, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications, because the next video might just be the one that changes everything. Your journey to becoming unignorable starts now. See you in the comments.